copy a segment. And if you remember, copying a segment starts off with taking your straight edge and drawing a line on that straight edge, making sure it's longer than the segment you're planning to copy. And then from there, it's simply a matter of taking your compass and measuring how long the segment is that you're copying with your compass. And then once you've got it measured with your compass, you come down, put the point of your compass on one end of the segment, mark off the length with your compass, and then you can erase the leftover past the intersection, and you got a segment that is equivalent to segment A. Now the next one too, asking us to do A plus B, so we're putting two segments together. So same process, but we're going to have to make sure we start with a decently long line so that we've got enough to put A and B together on there. And at this point, I still have my compass set to A's width, so I'm not going to adjust it. I'm just going to go ahead and mark that width on this segment. So there, I've got A marked. Now I come back up and measure what the width of B is to add to that A. Add a little bit. Got it set there. Put the point of our compass where A ended off. Mark where B should end. And then likewise we can erase anything left over past that intersection. And we got a segment equivalent to A plus B there. So then moving on to 3, we're doing a segment bisector. So first step is to put the point of your compass on one endpoint and make sure your compass is opened past halfway. Right? Doesn't matter how much past halfway, as long as it's clearly past halfway. So I'm going to put it about there. And make an arc that goes above and below that line. Alright, so we got that marked above and below, so switch over to the other endpoint and make a arc from there that's going to intersect the one we just did from the other endpoint. And then our perpendicular line should be the line that connects those two intersections together. So line up our ruler on those intersections. And draw our line there. So segment bisector. Then we've got angle bisector, which we start off point of our compass at the vertex. And we're going to make an arc that intersects both sides of that angle. And then once we've got that arc in there, we take our compass point to each one of those intersections from that arc and the sides. Widen that out a little bit. We're going to make an arc from each one of those intersections. And then our angle bisector will be the line that connects the vertex of that angle with that intersection we just made with those arcs there. So get that lined up, drawing our line, and there you do that, if you look on both sides, it should look pretty close to the exact same angle, just on each side of that line. All right, number 5, we're going to copy an angle. So first step of copying an angle is going to be to take our straight edge and to make a straight line. So draw in my line there. And the next step, we take our compass, put the point on the vertex of the angle we're going to copy, and we're going to make an arc that hits both sides of that angle. And then without adjusting our compass, we're going to leave it the exact same width. Going to put the point of our compass at the end point of the segment that we drew in at the beginning, and we're going to draw an arc a little bit bigger than the arc we did over there on the angle that we're copying, just to make sure we got room to find the intersection. And once we got that, we take our compass over to the original angle, and we use it to measure the distance between the arc intersections on that angle we're copying. So adjust our compass down so that it's the exact width of the intersections between the two arcs. And I bring the point of my compass over to the one that I'm constructing, at the point at where the arc intersected the line, and then use the distance there on the compass to mark where the other side should go through. So now to finish it off, we line up our straight edge with the end point of that segment and the intersection on that arc there we just made. So something like that. And we do a lot of things with copying an angle, so if you've got copying an angle down, then that helps with several of the other things that we do. So number 6, we're going to make a line that goes through point P that's parallel to the original line down there. So our first step, we're going to make a random point on that bottom line, doesn't matter where. We're just going to pick a point that we're going to connect with point P there. Now we're going to line up those 2 points and draw a line that goes from that point on that baseline all the way through P a little ways. Don't just stop at P or you'll have problems with doing the rest of this. Alright, so by doing that, we created an angle right here. All right. And basically what we're going to do in order to construct the parallel line through P is we're going to copy this angle, which will create a parallel line here. So take our compass, go through the process of copying an angle, which we start out with the vertex of our compass, or the point of our compass at the vertex of that angle. Make an arc that intersects both sides. And then without changing our compass, we're going to go to point P, put the point of our compass at P, and then we're going to make an arc there with that exact same setting. Make it a little bit bigger than the arc you made down there at the original angle, just to make sure you can find where the intersection needs to be. So then once you got that, the 2 arcs in place, next step we use our compass to measure the distance between the intersections on the arc of the angle that we're copying. figure out what that measurement is, then we're going to come up here, put the point of our compass where the arc crosses that line, and then mark off the point where that we need to go through with our parallel line. So now if we connect point P with that intersection, drawing a line through those two, we should have a line parallel to the line we start out with. Which should make sense because that first line we drew in would be a transversal in this case. And we got two lines cut by a transversal, and we've created a set of congruent corresponding angles. And if the corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines should be parallel. We go back to that conjecture from last semester. All right, so then number 7, we're going to take a line that goes through point P. It's going to be perpendicular to that line down there. A little bit easier than the one we just did. Let's start by taking our compass, putting the point of our compass at point P. Make sure our compass is wide enough to go past the line. Doesn't have to go past very far, just far enough that we can make an arc that's going to hit that line in 2 places. And then once we've got that arc hitting the line in 2 places, we put the point of our compass at each one of those points, and we're going to make an arc that hits somewhere towards the middle of those 2 points. So, arc there, and we'll move it over to the other side, the other intersection here. An arc that intersects that one. Now if we draw a line between point P and the intersection between those 2 arcs there, then we should have a nice perpendicular line that goes through point P and it's perpendicular to the line that we start out with. So. All right, so moving on to number 8. We got point P that's actually on the line this time, and we want to draw the line that's going to be perpendicular that goes through point P. So very similar to what we just did in 7, because we're going to start with our point on point P, and we're going to make an arc that's going to hit this line in 2 places. Doesn't matter what our setting is, how wide it is, as long as we hit the line in 2 places. Then once we've done that, we're going to take our compass, put the point at one of those intersections, and make sure our compass is wider than halfway, which we're going to have to open it up because it should be exactly at halfway, because P would be the halfway point between those 2 intersections at this point. And then once we've got that, we're going to draw an arc out here from that point. Without adjusting our compass, we're going to leave the same setting, move over to the other point that that arc intersects our line with. And then we're going to draw an arc that will intersect the one we just drew. So at this point, now if we connect point P with that intersection, the line that goes through those 2 points should be perpendicular to the line. And if you do this and it's clearly not a right angle, then you know you need to probably retry, because it should look pretty close to a right angle just by eyeballing it when you do this. Alright, so last up is something we didn't do on the other worksheet. We left it off, but I'm going to add it on here. It's really not that hard to do if you know how to copy a segment and copy angles. Because all we have to do to copy a triangle is to copy one of the sides of the triangle and then copy the angles at each end of the triangle, or each end of that segment. So first step, we're going to copy one of the sides of the triangle, which is the same process as copying a segment. So we use our straight edge and draw a straight line. And we're going to use our compass to measure what the length of that line is. So put the point at one end point of this segment we're going to copy. Let the pencil at the other end. And so that's going to be the length of our segment. So I bring and put the point of my compass at one end of that segment that I drew in. Mark off the width of that baseline segment from the triangle. And here we can either erase all the extra or leave it there. We can still draw the triangle whether the extra is there or not. Just looks a little cleaner if you erase it. Alright, so then after that point, now we need to copy the angles that would be at each end of this segment. So we need to copy this angle here and this one over here. So we're going to go through the process of copying an angle. Which means we put the point of our compass at one of the vertices. And we're going to make an arc that hits both sides of the angle. And I'm going to come back over to the segment that we've copied down there and make an arc there with the exact same compass setting that I started out with when I made the other arc. And then we use our compass to measure the distance between the intersections on those sides by that arc. Put the point on one of those intersections. Widen it out. Match up. So I want to take that setting, put my point where the arc crosses our line, mark it on the arc, that width that we need to be at. And so now we're going to finish off that angle by drawing the line between the endpoint and that intersection mark there. And once I've got that, now I just need the third side, which I'm going to get by copying the angle on the other end of this segment. So I'm going to go through the exact same process again. I'm going to put the point of our compass at the other end point. Make an arc that intersects both sides. And with that same exact compass setting, we're going to come over here to the other end point of the segment we drew at the very beginning. Draw that arc there. And then come back and measure the width between those two intersections of that arc and the sides of the triangle. And take that measurement over to our new triangle we're creating. At the point of our compass there. Mark that intersection. And then and line up the endpoint through that intersection. I can get this ruler lined up nicely. So then draw a line from that endpoint through that intersection. And there our final triangle should look very similar to the one we started out with. So it's just copying a segment and then copying two angles, one on each end of the segment. Alright, so now to the back side. We're starting off with a circumcenter, which the circumcenter is the point where all the perpendicular bisectors of a triangle intersect. So we've got to construct perpendicular bisectors of at least two sides here. So we're going to take our compass, put the point on one of the endpoints of one of the sides. Make sure our compass is opened wider than half the distance, half the length of that side. Then we're going to make an arc that goes above and below. Then we're going to take the compass over to the other endpoint without adjusting the compass width at all. I'm going to make another arc that goes above and below that intersects the one we just made. And once we've got that, take our straight edge, line it up with those two intersections, and draw the line that goes through. And go ahead and extend that line out past the triangle a ways, so you've got room to find the actual intersection. Alright, so that's for one side. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for another side. So I'm going to come back here, put my point at this vertex, make sure our compass is at least past halfway. Make my arc that's going to go above and below there, or I guess to the left and to the right from this angle. I'm going to put my point at the other endpoint. Draw in the arc that's going to cross that one we just made. Now we can bring in our straight edge, line it up with the two intersections there. And draw our line that goes through those two intersections. So in this point right here is our circumcenter, which should be equidistant from all the vertices. And the way we can check to make sure of that is we can put the point of our compass on that circumcenter, spread our compass out so that it's open the distance from that circumcenter to one of the vertices. Doesn't matter what vertex you choose, because if you did it right, it should be the same distance from any of the vertices to that point. And then once we get it set there, draw a circle. And if you did it right, you should hit all three vertices perfectly, or be really close anyway. Alright, so now on over to the incenter, which the incenter is the intersection of the three angle bisectors of a triangle. So in order to do the incenter, we need to construct the angle bisectors. So first step of constructing an angle bisector is to put the point of the compass at one of the vertices, make an arc that crosses both sides of the angle. And then we move our compass point to each one of those points where the arc intersects the sides and make an arc that goes out towards the middle there. Move over to the other end point. Get it lined up right. And make that arc so that those two intersect. And then the angle bisector will be the line that connects the vertex at that intersection we just made there. Get that lined up. Throw in our line that goes through there. So that's one angle bisector. We need at least two so that we can find where they intersect, which if we did all three, they should all intersect at the exact same spot because they should be concurrent lines. All right, so I'll move over to this other vertex. Let's make an arc that intersects both sides. And then take the point of my compass to each one of those intersections and make an arc out towards the middle. So from the top one there, now move down to the bottom intersection here. Arc that intersects that one. So now we line our vertex up with that intersection, our straight edge here. And we're going to draw in our line there. So if we did those right, that point right there should be our incenter, which by definition should be equidistant from each one of the sides, which will allow us to draw in an inscribed circle. But in order to do that, we've got to know what the exact distance is from the incenter point to one of the sides so we can set our compass properly. So to do that, we've got to construct the perpendicular line that goes from that incenter point to one of the sides. So I'm going to go ahead and do it from on the bottom side here. So open our compass up enough that we can draw an arc that hits that side in two places. Then we take our compass stylus point there and we line it up with each of those points where that intersects. So that arc there. Now we're going to move over to the other end point where we intersected. And draw the arc that will intersect the first one there, like so. And so when we line up our straight edge here, between those 2 points, and this ruler will not line up perfectly. It's causing me problems here. This is going to be a little off on here because I can't get this to line up perfectly. So I draw in that line there. And so if done perfectly, we should be able to put the point of our stylus here at the incenter point. And then open our compass to the width from the incenter to where that perpendicular line crosses that side, and draw in a circle that should fit both sides perfectly, but I knew that was going to be off because it wouldn't let me draw my line in exactly where it needed to be. If you do it right, then the circle should hit all three sides just perfectly on the edges there. Alright, so now I'm moving down to the centroid. And the centroid is where all of the medians intersect, which a median is a line that goes from a vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. So in order to do that, we've got to figure out where the midpoint is on each side. So in order to do that, we're going to go through the same process we do to find the perpendicular bisector. I'm going to put the point of our compass on one end point, open it up past halfway, make an arc that goes above and below. And we're going to move over to the other end point of that segment. And look at that, I did it exactly halfway. How about that? Let's try that again. So make sure your compass is past halfway. So make it a little more drastic so it's very clear if you have to. So make the line that goes above and below. Now over to the other endpoint. The arc goes above and below. So you got the two intersections. Now in this case, we don't need the whole line. We just need to line up those two intersections and find where they're going to cross that line. Because right there where it should cross should be the midpoint. So this is the midpoint of this side. Now we line up our straight edge between that midpoint and the vertex across from it, or opposite it would be the proper language there. Line those two up and connect them with a line. So we're going to do the same process on the other sides. Point my compass here. That vertex. Make an arc that goes to each side of that line. I'm going to take that point of my compass up to the other end point. Make an arc that intersects that one. And once again, we're going to connect those with our straight edge. We don't need the whole line, we just need to know where it's going to cross that side. There to mark our midpoint. And we can line up our vertex with that midpoint to that side. Draw in our line, and that should be our centroid. Right there. Here we're going to do the orthocenter, which the orthocenter is the intersection of all of the perpendicular, of all the altitudes. All right, and so an altitude is the line that goes from a vertex and is perpendicular to the side opposite the vertex. So we got to basically construct a line that's going to go through the vertex and be perpendicular to the side opposite. So in order to do that, we open up our compass wide enough that we can put it on the point of the vertex, and then we can make a arc. Narrow it down just a little bit. Make an arc that's going to hit this side in two places. So there we got two intersections, and then from there we bring our compass down, put the point at each of the intersections where we cross that line. We'll make an arc towards the middle here. Come back around here to the other side, put it on that intersection. So that gives us an intersection outside the triangle that we want to connect to that vertex. Do our best to line it up. So then once we've got that, move that over a little bit, just a little bit on the lineup. Alright, so then we're going to do the exact same process from the other vertices. Now one thing that's possible is that you might come up against a situation where you find it hard to open up your compass to where you can cross the side twice. If that's the case, then you just have to extend that side out. Alright, so we're doing the exact same thing from the other side. Find a point where we can open it up enough that it's going to hit twice. I can open it up just a little bit more. There, I'm going to hit that twice there. So I'm going to bring my compass point to each one of those intersections. Make an arc from each one of those. Move it over to the other intersection. Line it up. Got arc there. And then line up my straight edge between that vertex. Side. And from there. So this point right here should be my orthocenter, which a good way to check to see how well you did on that is to go ahead and construct the third one to see if you cross in the exact same spot. The closer you are to crossing the exact same spot, the better you did on constructing those. So I'm going to start off at the other third vertex that we haven't done yet. Open up so that I can cross this side in two places. Open up just a little bit wider. That's going to be wide enough. to the point where I cross each one of those. Bring my compass in a little tighter here. Alright, so make an arc there. Go over to the other point where we crossed over. Make an arc there. I'll align my straight edge. Put that vertex and the intersection, if I can get my straight edge to do that. And draw in my altitude there. And might be just a hair off there, but for the most part that's pretty close to being at the same spot. So that is an orthocenter, and that concludes the review.